Ladies and gentlemen, in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to turn you into an editor who can create this clean and minimal editing style that's going viral in 2025. This editing style is blowing up in the coaching and business niche. And tons of agencies, coaches, and business owners are looking for editors who can edit in this specific style. So today, I'm going to teach you how to create 3 high-quality viral animations that fit this clean aesthetic. First, we've got a sleek Google Meet UI pop-up with a smooth slider animation. Second, we have a minimal high-quality scene setup with abstract title animations, and third, a unique eye animation that transitions into a circle leading into a clean scene with 2 dynamic title animations. And by the end of this video, if you follow along step by step, you'll have 3 polished animations you can post on your socials to attract potential clients. And if you're a serious editor who wants to master high quality animations, we've got over 300 courses inside of Ultimate Editors. The link is down below. But without further ado, let's get to work on our first animation. If we analyze this first animation a little bit more, we can notice that it's made up of some shape layers, these 3 icons over here, and then one of the shape layers pops out and everything scales back down. And finally, we have the slider scale in and this slide select between these 2 icons. This will be a little bit complex, but it's going to give us a very high quality animation, so let's dive right into it. As always, let's start by creating our background. Over in After Effects, I'm going to right click and add myself a solid layer. Then to color it, we're going to be adding the gradient ramp effect. We set the ramp type to radial and bring it down here. Then change the start color to a white and the end color to a gray. Alright, now let's add some layers to this background. I'm duplicating the solid layer, deleting the gradient ramp, and adding a Venetian's blinds effect. Then set the transition completion to 85, then duplicate the effect and set the rotation to 90 degrees, and this is going to give you these dots. Now we're going to add a gradient ramp on top of these, and then set the start to a gray and the end to a darker gray. This looks good, but we can add one more layer to give it more texture. We're adding in the grid effect, sizing it like so, and then setting the border to 2 and the grid color to a gray. Now after resizing it properly, this is our background. This is a very high quality white background that we can reuse later on in the video. But now let's start working on our animation. First, we're adding a shape layer and we're going to create a square right here. Then let's make its edges slightly more round, and finally to color it, I'm adding the 4 color gradient. This just generates 4 colors like so, and I'm just going to set all these colors to a gray like this. Then to make it look better, I go in and I make some of them lighter and some of them darker, and this gives us this cool looking gradient background. Now we're going to add another shape layer and draw a square right here. Let's then round off the corners a little bit and also add the 4 color gradient to it. This time, make all the colors a lighter gray. You're going to end up with this box. Let's then duplicate the layer and bring the second box over here to the right side. Now we're going to quickly import a user icon to the scene and place it right here. Then let's make it a lighter gray than the box behind it and duplicate the layer and move it to the right side. Great, this is looking good. Now let's work on our icons. Let's add in a phone icon, place it over here, and then we're going to add a shape layer and draw out a circle behind it like so. Just make sure that the circle color is red, and then add the tint effect to the phone icon and change it to white. Finally, we parent the phone to the shape layer under it and scale it down here. Now we're going to add in our chat and video icons, apply a gradient ramp to one of them, make the start white and the end a light gray, and paste the effect on the other icon. Then let's place them right there next to the red icon. Great. Once it all looks good, we can start animating, and this is where things are going to get a bit more tricky, but I'll make sure to guide you guys step by step through this. First, we select this gray background and add a keyframe to the scale. Let's move it forward and have it start at 0. This is going to make it go from small to big. Then we smoothen out the animation in the speed graph to get this. Now, right around here, I will move these 2 icon layers to here and add a keyframe for the scale as well. Let's move it forward and have it start at 0. And also smoothen this out. Now previously I actually parented this icon to the shape layer behind it, which means the shape layer controls everything. And if the pop-up looks good, we're going to select both of them, keyframe the opacity and move it forward, and then go back and set it to start to 0. Once we are happy with our pop-up, let's copy and paste these keyframes on the second shape layer and the icon. Okay, this looks great. Now to animate the icons, I'm starting with the phone in the middle. Once again, the phone layer is parented to the shape layer, so I go to my shape layer, I keyframe the position, move it forward, and have it start slightly lower. Then smoothen it out, and as always, keyframe the opacity on both the phone and the shape layer, then move back and have it start at 0. Now for the last one, let's select both these icons, keyframe their position, move it forward, and have them both start slightly lower. And keyframe the opacity, move it forward, and have it start at 0. And with all these animations complete, you're going to get this cool pop-in animation. Alright, now let's create a nice red glow behind this shape layer. First, I'm going to duplicate the shape layer and use the one under our main layer as the red outline. Then I have it only start after the pop-in animation is complete and simply add a keyframe here, increasing its scale. Then I changed the layer's color to red, and there we go. Now we add a deep glow to it with an exposure of 0.1, and we notice the glow roughly comes in, so I made it fade in using the opacity in the beginning of the clip. Great, now we finally need that text comment to come in up at the top. So I add a shape layer, draw this rectangle, round off its corners, and then using my pen tool, I had a little triangle down here, and this is our shape. Now we're just gonna make it a dark gray color, and let's add this text on top of here, type out what we want to have in the rectangle, and place it inside. This text is just a simple font with a deep glow, so I make this lower section a bold font for stylization, make sure to parent it to the shape layer, and then let's keyframe the end position, move it forward, and then have it start on the right over here. And make it start quick and then slow down in the speed graph. And finally, as always, create an opacity fade-in animation on both the layers. Now, once we are happy with all of these, it's time to move on to the second part of this first animation, which is the slider. To do this, I'm going to cut all the layers right here, and just like how all our animations pop in smoothly, they also need to pop out smoothly. To do this, it's really simple. Your first set of keyframes is when your animation is faded out, and your second set is where they come in. So all you have to do is copy the second set and paste it here, which means the animation won't change in between these two keyframes. Then copy the first set and paste it here at the cut, which means your animation fades out from this point to this point. The last thing you need to do is head over to the speed graph and correct it, as it might go back too slow in the graph. And check out how this looks on our text layer. And all that you gotta do now is basically do the same copying and pasting of keyframes to all of your layers, basically reversing the first set of keyframes at the end of each clip. And after all that, you should end up with a fade out like this. Awesome, now it's finally time to work on our slider before we complete this first animation. First, we're gonna add in a shape layer, and we create a rectangle right here with slightly rounded corners like this. Then we're gonna add in a 4-color gradient, but make the color variance of a light gray like this. Then let's add in our user icon, add a tint effect to it, and set the black color to a darker gray. Then place it up here, duplicate the layer, and bring it down here. Then we're adding in another shape layer and using the pen tool to draw a line right here and add a little stroke to it to make it a light gray. Next step is to add in our text, so we duplicate this text we previously made here, bring it up and over to here, and simply write out "please buy my product" and then place it down here under our user. Now we're going to add more spice to this animation by adding in another line in that text titled "Beggar's Approach," and then we're going to set that font to bold. Now we just add a tint effect and map the white to a gray like so. Then just duplicate it, bring it down here, and write out "Are you interested?" with the words "Winner's Approach" under it. The last thing we're going to need to do is the slider on the left side, so we are adding in a shape layer, then drawing a rectangle here, set its color to white, and now to make a special boxed glow, we need to add a shape layer on top of it, create the following shape like so. Then let's add a gradient ramp to it, set the black to the right side and the white to the left side. Now check this, let's add a deep glow to the rectangle we made earlier under the layer, and finally track matte the rectangle to this shape layer up over here. This forces the glow to only appear in the light values of this polygon layer that we made earlier, and that is how we get this boxed glow. Finally, we parent the polygon to the glow under it and we're good to go. Now to create a slider animation, we keyframe the current position, move forward and drop it down to here. Let's create a spike in the speed graph, and I don't like how robotic this is, so we're gonna space them out a lot. Now to make this more realistic, I want these icons to be white when the slider's on them, but turn to gray when it isn't. To do this, I head into my tint effect, add a keyframe to the gray color for the icon, then move the keyframe forward to where the slider is no longer on the icon, and have it start right here as a really light gray. Do the same exact effect to the title under it as well, and you get this effect. And now for the bottom icons, we want those to start as gray and then fade to white as the slider gets on them, like so. Now this animation is basically complete. Let's just go ahead and finalize it with a cool minimal pop-up to all of these elements on our screen. So we're going to start by keyframing the scale and moving it forward, but having it start over here on 0. Smoothen this out in the graph to get this pop-up. Then we're going to add a keyframe to the user icon, move it forward to here, and have it start slightly smaller. Then just keyframe the opacity starting at 0 and ending at 100 to get this simple pop-in. Make sure to add the same opacity keyframes to the title under it as well. Then just copy and paste the keyframes to the icon below it. Finally, let's go to our slider, keyframe the current position a few frames before the first keyframe happens, and have it start off to the left a little. and then obviously create our opacity fade in over here as well. Now the animation is too fast, so I'm bringing the first keyframe all the way back here and also copying these keyframes over to here so that it pauses for a little while before starting the second animation. And with all this being said, this completes our first animation, and this is what an animation with all these layers looks like. You've probably heard that's too expensive more times than you can count. And the solution isn't trying to convince people to actually buy your product. It's making sure that the right people are on the coach. Now let's be real. If you're watching this, you're an editor who wants to 1. Learn how to edit high quality videos, and 2. Start making money with video editing. But right now, you're stuck. Either your edits aren't at the highest quality level yet, or you don't have the right clients paying you what you're worth. And that's exactly why I created the Ultimate Editors, the program that makes you a high quality editor and lands you high paying clients in just 90 days. You seem pretty interested, so here's exactly how we turn you into a high quality editor and get you a $1,000 editing job in just 90 days. The first 30 days, phase 1, you're going to master Premiere Pro and After Effects with our 100+ course library, teaching you everything from beginner basics to expert editing in both programs. Phase 2, the next 30 days, you're going to learn 7 viral editing styles of 2025. You're going to get access to training on editing styles like Josh Leon, Devin Jatho, Houston Cold, By Maximize, Iman Gaji, and much more. And finally, phase 3, the last 30 days, we're going to build out your personal brand that attracts high quality clients so that you can make $1,000 per month editing videos. And this isn't a random course. This is me personally taking you on and coaching you to become a high quality editor. So if you want to master Premiere Pro and After Effects, learn the 7 viral editing styles of 2025, and land a $1,000 editing job in the next 90 days, then click the link below and join Ultimate Editors. You'll be directed to a page where I tell you everything about how this program is made to help editors like you. But with this being said, it's time to dive into animation number 2. And looking at this animation, all it is a simple profile with this radar graphic around it, then just some minimal text pop-up with a cool pop-up and a slide effect, and the second animation is just a text sequence with animations. So let's go ahead and make this. First, I'm going to duplicate the backgrounds I used in the previous animation. The first thing I'm going to work on is the user with the radar waves around him. So let's add a user icon and color it with the 4-color gradient by choosing a bunch of colors related to light gray. Now let's make it a 3D layer and place it right here in the center of the screen. Now we add a shape layer on top of it, make sure it is 3D as well, and zoom out a little like this. Draw a circle right here, then simply delete the fill from the shape layer and add a stroke of 1 and color it a gray color like this. Now let's create a quick animation for the circle by keyframing the current scale and having it start at 0. Then just smoothen it out in the graph of the graph editor. And now let's duplicate it and go to our second keyframe and make it larger. Then duplicate it, make it larger again, duplicate it one more time and make it larger one more time. Now this all looks good, I just want to add one final extra touch of detail. First, I'm adding a shape layer, and then using my ellipse tool, I'm going to draw a small circle here. Finally, I'm going to place it on the line right here, then duplicate it and move the second circle up top here, then duplicate it again, move the last circle over to here. Finally, I'm going to put the first circle over here on the line, then put the second circle over here, and put the last circle all the way here. And finally, to make them all rotate together, I'm parenting the top circle layer to the one below it, and that one to the one below it, all the way until we parent the last circle to our circle shape layer over here. Finally, let's keyframe its current orientation, move it all the way back, and increase the orientation on the Z axis, and move that keyframe all the way till the end. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all my circle shape layers, keyframing their current opacity, moving back and starting it at 0. Now we just offset them, and there we go. The radar user icon is complete. Now using the move tool, let's move our scene so that the animation is at the bottom right like so. And let's get started on our text. First, we're adding a text layer and making it a 3D layer. Then writing out ideal client. Then let's size it up so that we can see it and place it right here on the top left. Finally, let's change its font to a font called Gold Script, and then I duplicate it and change the font back to Nexa and type out a long description of who the ideal client is. Then I'm going to scale it down, move it over to the left side under our big title, and the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate it one more time. Finally, I'm going to use a thin font on this text and write out "These are the right fit for your service" and place it down here and add a light red color to it. Now I remember that my first part of the animation is supposed to be talking about the bad client, not the good one, so I changed this title to Bad Client, this description to a bad description, and this to not the right fit. Now I want to stylize this scene a bit more before we start animating, so let's quickly duplicate this layer, make it huge, remove the fill, add a very light stroke, and just place it up here. Now for this first text, I keyframe the current position, move back, and move it slightly to the left. Then speed it up in the speed graph. Finally, I keyframe the opacity, move back, and have it start at 0 to get this smooth pop in. Then paste the same animation to this text and use the anchor point to bring it back here and paste it on here as well, but use the anchor point to bring it back too. Then I just offset them a little like so and we're good to go. Now this all looks good, so let's go ahead and move on to our second scene where I'm using my move tool to move to the right side over here. Then I'm going to select all these animations and duplicate them right there. Let's start by bringing Bad Client over to here and having it pop in from the right side instead of the left. Let's also bring in the description over to here and also make sure it pops in from the right side, not the left. And finally, bring in the red text and make it pop in from the right side, not the left. Let's move all this text over to here. Let's then select all our old text here, keyframe all of its position, move forward, and have them all fade out so that we can only see the next text. Now we change this to Ideal Client, change this description to a good one, and finally change this to the right fit and set its color as green. Don't forget to duplicate this text, make it big, remove the fill, and add a stroke to it. And with all these scenes set up, it's finally time to link it all together with a camera. So we're going to right click and add a camera here. Let's start it over here, slightly zoomed out to where we can see the full frame. Then just keyframe the current position, move forward, and right after our next text comes up, let's have the camera move to the right where we can see the next scene. Smoothen this whole thing out in the graph editor to get a smooth slide in. Now this whole animation ends right here, so let's select all these layers and cut them here. And for the next section, let's start working on our text sequence. First, we need to subtitle everything, so I'm adding in my text over here and typing out the first word, which is the word Y. Then I duplicate the layer and type out my second word, which is the word R, and just keep doing this until I have a bunch of text layers with all the words I say in this sentence. Now the next step is to add an animation to all of them, so I select all the layers, keyframe the current position, move back, and have it start slightly off to the right. Then just smoothen it out in the graph editor. And then I spend some time just aligning the text layers to where I say them in the videos like so. And lastly, I use the anchor point of each text to place them neatly in a clean sentence with even spaces like this. And as a final touch of detail, I make these last two words a bold font. And there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, animation 2 is finally complete, and this is what it all looks like. Let's be real, your ideal clients aren't the ones asking for discounts. High-level buyers don't hesitate when they see real value. So why are you still dealing with unqualified leads? By this point, I know it's getting exhausting, but there's one final animation to complete before we get to enjoy this entire short in all its glory. And this is animation number 3. First, we're starting with a clean eye animation, then transitioning into a minimal circle to finish it off with a button transition into the scene with 2 titles and a reveal at the end. Let's go ahead and make this. So first, we're going to add in our white background as usual, and I'm going to start by adding in a shape layer, and using my pen tool, I'm going to draw 4 points like this to make this shape. Then I keyframe the path, move back, and have them start here. This will make them open up like this. Then let's smoothen it out in the graph editor like so, and then we're going to add another shape layer on top of this and draw an ellipse right here and set the color to gray. Finally, keyframe the scale here, move back, and have it start at 0. And also smoothen this one out in the graph editor to get this open up and scale in animation. To make the eyeball move to the left, I keyframe the position, move forward, and move it to the left. Then I want it to pause for a bit, so I move forward and add a keyframe for the current position so that it stays here. Then move forward again and move it to the right. Now in the graph editor, I make sure to smoothen these curves as much as humanly possible to get this jittery quick movement. And now I'm going to add a text layer, write out broad, and use a lighter font and place it down here. Then I just animate it fading in when the eye moves towards it here. Then duplicate the text, write out unclear, and move it up here so that it fades in when the eye looks at it. Now I wanted to add more complexity to this shape layer here, so I went into my path and I just added 2 extra points right here. Then moved forward and added another 2 extra points, and simply had them move further out like this on our second keyframe to get this open up animation. Now let's make this ball movement more realistic. First, unlink the scale, and between our first movement to the left, let's have the ball become longer, then shrink back. This makes the animation look faster, and we're going to do the same thing over here on our second movement animation, and just look at how much nicer this looks now. Now in order to transition into the next animation, I need my ball to come back to the center. So I added a keyframe for the current position, move forward, and move it back to the center. Then keyframe the opacity of our shape layer with the eye and make it fade out as the ball comes to the center. And also keyframe the opacity of the text layers and have it drop to 0 at the same time as well. So now we just have the ball, which means we can move into our next scene. First, we add a 4-color gradient to this and set these colors to a dark gray. Then I'm opening up the scale properties and making it scale up right here, and making sure to maintain this smooth flow in the speed graph. Then let's stylize the scene a little more by adding a shape layer, drawing out an ellipse in the center here, and removing the fill but adding a stroke with a dark gray color. Let's make the stroke bigger and add the trim paths effect. Then just decrease the end to 50 and the start to 25. Then I set the end to 25 and keyframed it so that the line goes back here, and then move the keyframe back, and then I had it come up to 50 so it draws out like this. Smoothen out the animation in the speed graph as always. Then let's duplicate it once and change its scale and rotation. Then duplicate it again and change its scale and rotation again. I think this was too much, so I rearranged them like so. Now to make them rotate, I selected all of them, keyframed the rotation, moved forward and rotated them all together. Now it's time to set up the scene with some text and graphics. First we start by copying this artistic text we added earlier and pasting it here. Let's just write out premium clients and place it up here. Then let's add a shape layer and draw a rectangle down here. Now this rectangle is eventually going to become a background, so to color it I added a 4-color gradient effect and I used some dark gray and light gray variants. Finally, I just keyframed the scale and moved back and set it to 0 and smoothed it out. Now let's add a text layer, write out some $signs and set the font to heavy. Set the color to white and place it on the bottom right here. And now we need to create a nice glitch effect on it. Let's start by keyframing the opacity at 0, moving forward and setting it to 100. Then moving forward and setting it back down to 0 and repeating the cycle over and over again. Finally, let's add a deep glow and we're good to go. Now I need this text to fade out later on, so I duplicated those opacity glitch keyframes, but made sure the first keyframe starts at 100 and the last keyframe ends at 0. Now let's make this rectangle turn into a background by keyframing its current scale, moving forward and simply making it so big that it takes up the entire screen. And now we can finally work on our last scene over here. So first up, I'm adding a text layer and writing out premium clients, and then I'm resizing it and placing it up here. Now we duplicate it and type out a big description to premium clients, use a light font and scale it down to here and move it over to here. Now moving them both over to here, duplicating premium clients and writing out the word 1 and resizing it over to here and making its opacity lower. Perfect. Now let's duplicate the word 1, make it huge like so, remove the fill and add a super light stroke, like really light. Now I select all these layers, duplicate them, but bring them down to here to the bottom right. For our second text, I am writing out 2 in the back, 2 in here, no objections in this text, and a long description of no objections here. Make sure to put the outline on the bottom right and move all your text layers to where we can actually see them. Now I selected all my first text, keyframe the current position, move back and have it start off to the left. Then smoothen it out in the graph editor to get a quick pop-up. Then keyframe all their transparency going from 0 to 100. Let's offset them a little to get this smooth pop-in animation, and then I do the exact same thing in the second pair of texts down here to get a smooth pop-in. And my final touch of detail here is to add in a shape layer, draw out a huge circle here and align it as a background to the top left text, then color it to a darker gray than the background, and finally keyframe the scale at 100, move back and have it start at 0. And obviously smoothen it out in the graph editor. And then just duplicate it and move it over to the bottom right text. And the final thing I'll do is I'll duplicate this text and place it here in the middle of the screen, write out high quality clients, make it slightly bigger, add some deep glow to it, and then just add an opacity fade in to make it cinematic. And ladies and gentlemen, this is it for animation number 3. Now let's go ahead and finally enjoy this short with the sound design, all 3 animations, and everything in between. If you're still getting price objections on sales calls, it's not your offer, it's your audience, bro. You've probably heard "that's too expensive" more times than you can count. And the solution isn't trying to convince people to actually buy your product. It's making sure that the right people are on the call, which means it's making sure that the right people are seeing your content in the first place. Because let's be real, your ideal clients aren't the ones asking for discounts. High-level buyers don't hesitate when they see real value. So why are you still dealing with unqualified leads? It's because your content isn't filtering them out. If your messaging and content is too broad and unclear, you're gonna keep attracting the wrong kind of clients. When you dial in your positioning and start speaking to premium clients, everything changes. No more back and forth, no more objections, just people who know that they want to work with you. If you're ready to stop getting the objections of "that's too expensive" and trying to get people to buy your product, just check out this profile. We've got a bunch of content that's gonna help you do that. I understand I didn't cover the sound design in this video. However, I've got other videos covering that if you guys are interested. Now you guys know how to make all 3 of these viral and clean animations. So go out there, start posting them, use them in edits, and get the best clients. And guys, thank you so much for watching all the way till the end. It means so much to me. You guys all have an amazing day or night. God bless all of you guys, and I'm gonna see you on the next video.